she found him slumped in the driver's seat of a burning sedan, blood spreading across his white shirt like spilled ink. 2 infant car seats wedged beside him as flames crawled up the hood. He should have been dead. Instead, his eyes locked onto hers, sharp, calculating, desperate, and his hand raised a gun that trembled but never wavered from her chest. The temperature had dropped 15 degrees in 2 hours. The kind of December cold that turned breath into crystals and bit straight through cheap delivery jackets. Selah Pham watched the heater struggle in her ancient Honda, pushing out air barely warmer than the night outside. The dashboard clock glowed 11:47 p.m. She'd been on the road since 2 that afternoon. Part-time data entry until 6, then straight into the quick-bite grind. She'd started pre-med 3 years ago, made it through organic chemistry and anatomy before her parents died. A drunk driver on I-90, metal twisting into unrecognizable shapes, her phone ringing at 2 a.m. with news that shattered her world. She'd dropped out 2 months later, when grief made studying impossible, and the bills made dreaming stupid. Her hands ached from typing. Her stomach had been empty since the protein bar she'd split that morning, saving half for tomorrow's lunch. The app pinged. "You have arrived. Deliver to South Rail Yard, Service Gate 7, $200 tip." Selah's chest tightened with something close to desperation. That tip meant rent. It meant her bank account wouldn't bounce when her student loan payment tried to process on Friday. It meant she could buy groceries with protein in them, not just ramen and shame. She grabbed the thermal bag from the passenger seat. Premium delivery. The kind of late-night order only someone with serious money would place. The receipt showed a $300 tab for Thai food that smelled expensive even through the insulated bag. Selah killed the engine. The silence hit wrong. No industrial hum, no guard shack lights, no security patrols, just the whistle of wind through chain link and the distant groan of the expressway. She'd delivered to industrial areas before. They usually had cameras, night shifts, that low buzz of places that never truly slept. This felt abandoned, hollow. Just drop it and run, she thought. Clock out, drive home, eat, sleep. But that $200 tip. Selah pulled her turquoise hoodie up and stepped into the cold. It hit like a slap, sharp and vindictive. The rail yard stretched ahead, a maze of rusted containers and skeletal cranes. The service gate stood open. The booth where a guard should be sitting was dark, its window reflecting nothing but her own uncertain face. Her sneakers crunched on gravel as she approached. The thermal bag felt heavier with each step. Something in her gut twisted. Pre-med had taught her to trust that instinct. The same instinct that made her notice breathing patterns, that caught the subtle signs before machines did. She was 30 feet from the gate when she heard it. Crying. Not just any crying, the desperate, hiccuping wail of an infant. 2 voices, actually. 2 babies. Selah froze. The thermal bag slipped from her numb fingers, hitting the ground with a dull thud. Forgotten. "Hello?" Her voice came out smaller than intended, swallowed by wind and darkness. "Is someone there?" The crying intensified, terrified, abandoned. Selah's feet moved before her brain could stop them. She rounded a stack of shipping containers, her eyes struggling against the darkness. The distant streetlight from the main road barely reached here, casting everything in sickly orange shadows. Then she saw them. 2 infant car seats sat on the frozen concrete, partially sheltered by a rusted overhead walkway. The babies inside couldn't have been more than 6 months old. Their small faces red and scrunched with distress. Their cries ragged and desperate. But it was the car that made Selah's breath stop. A black sedan, halfway through a chain-link fence, its front end crumpled around a concrete pillar. Smoke, thick and acrid, poured from under the hood. Flames licked at the undercarriage, small now but growing. The driver's door hung open, and inside, slumped against the steering wheel, was a man. Even from here, she could see the dark stains spreading across his shoulder and chest. Too thick to be water. Too dark to be anything but blood. His suit was expensive. Even ruined and blood-soaked, she could tell it cost more than her entire year's tuition. Dark hair fell across his forehead. Tattoos, intricate, deliberate, crawled up his neck from beneath his collar, disappearing into his hairline like some ancient map. "Oh my God!" Selah ran toward the car. Heat from the spreading fire hit her face. Sir, can you hear me?" His eyes fluttered open. Dark, almost black in the shadows, filled with pain and something else that made her heart hammer. Fear. Not for himself, for the crying babies beside the car. "Leave." His voice was barely a whisper, heavy with an accent she couldn't place. Korean, maybe. His hand moved, slow, shaking, and Selah's blood turned to ice. He was holding a gun. The barrel lifted, wavering, pointing at her chest. "Leave," he rasped again, "or die." Selah's hands were already reaching for him before her mind caught up with her body. Arterial blood. She'd seen enough in her clinical rotations before dropping out to know this was bad. The wound was still bleeding, though not as heavily as it must have been initially. His skin was cold. Too cold. His breathing shallow and ragged. "You need a hospital." The words came out automatic, trained. "I need to call 911. "No." The gun steadied just slightly. His jaw clenched. "No police, no hospital. They'll find the children." The babies were screaming now, a sound that tore at something primal in Selah's chest. She looked at the flames growing under the car, at the locked gates behind him, at the empty guard booth. He wasn't hiding here. He was trapped here, dying here. Her mind raced, 2 years of pre-med before she dropped out, before her parents died in that twisted wreck of metal and fire on I-90, before she'd arrived at the hospital too late, before she'd stood in the ICU while machines breathed for bodies that would never wake up, before she'd screamed at doctors who'd done everything right, but couldn't save the people she loved most. If I'd just known more. If I'd just been faster. If I'd just... Please. The word left his lips like a prayer. The gun lowered, his strength failing. Please. Selah looked at the babies, looked at this man who was dying but still clung to consciousness for them, looked at the spreading flames and the empty darkness and the locked gates. Every rational thought screamed at her to run, to call for help, to do the legal thing, the safe thing, the thing that wouldn't destroy what was left of her life. But she thought of her father's last words, recorded in his final voicemail, the one she'd never deleted. "Don't let them down, Sel. Whatever you do, don't let them down." "Okay." The word left her mouth before she could stop it. "Okay, but we're moving. Now, can you walk?" He nodded. It was probably a lie. Selah looked at the babies, their faces red from crying, their small bodies strapped into car seats like anchors to this world. "Are they yours?" Something flickered in his eyes. Pride, even through the agony. "My children. Minho. Yuna. Then Minho and Yuna are coming too." Selah grabbed the first car seat, heavier than she expected, and set it carefully away from the smoke. Then the second. Her arms burned. She returned to the man, sliding her shoulder under his good arm. "On 3. My car is 50 feet away. You're going to make it. Understand?" He nodded again. 1, 2, 3. They rose together. His weight nearly buckled her knees. He was tall, easily 6'2", solid muscle beneath the ruined suit. He bit back a sound of pain, and Selah felt him trembling. Step by agonizing step, they made their way toward her Honda. Selah's lungs burned. Her legs shook. She kept talking, partly to keep him conscious, partly to keep herself from screaming. "I'm Selah, by the way. Selah Pham. I'm a medical student. Well, I was. I dropped out. But I remember enough. God, I hope I remember enough." They reached the car. She propped him against the side and ran back for the babies, grabbing both car seats, her arms screaming in protest. She secured them in the back seat, her fingers fumbling with the belts. The babies had quieted to exhausted whimpers, their wide eyes watching her with that unnerving awareness infants sometimes have. "It's okay," Selah whispered, though she had no idea if that was true. "I've got you." The man had slid down the side of the car by the time she returned. Selah hauled him into the passenger seat, his blood immediately soaking into her upholstery. His head fell back against the headrest. She slammed the door and raced to the driver's side. The engine coughed twice before turning over. Selah's hands were shaking so badly she could barely grip the wheel. She pulled away from the rail yard, her eyes darting between the road and the man beside her. In the glow of the dashboard, she could see his face clearly now. Sharp features, the intricate ink crawling up his neck, disappearing into his hairline, the suit worth 6 months of her rent, the watch on his wrist worth enough to pay off her student loans. What have I done? The drive to her studio apartment usually took 30 minutes. Selah made it in 19, running 3 red lights, pushing her Honda until the frame rattled. She kept talking the whole way, rambling, desperate. "My place is tiny, really tiny, but it's clean. I have medical supplies, bandages and stuff. Basic first aid. I can do this, I can—" "Thank you." His voice cut through her panic. Quiet but steady. Selah's hands tightened on the wheel. In the back seat, one of the twins started crying again. A sound that reached into her chest and squeezed. "Almost there," she promised them all, her voice breaking. "Almost there." She pulled up to her building, a sagging 4-story walk-up in Pilsen that should have been condemned years ago, killed the engine, and sat for one long moment in the silence. She'd just brought a wounded stranger and 2 babies to her home. She hadn't called the police. She had no idea what had happened to him, who he was running from, or why he was so desperate to avoid hospitals. His hand touched her arm. Selah jumped. His eyes were open. Clearer now, despite the pain etched into every line of his face. "Thank you," he said again. And the weight of those 2 words settled over her like a crown she never asked to wear. Selah nodded and stepped out into the freezing night. And so it began. Getting him up 3 flights of stairs nearly killed them both. If you're hooked in and you're ready to enjoy this story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one. And you don't want to miss it. Now, back to the story. The first flight was agony. The second was hell. By the third, Selah was half carrying, half dragging Keegan's weight, her shoulders screaming under the burden. His blood left a trail on the stairwell walls where he'd braced himself. Dark smears that would be impossible to explain to her landlord. "Stay with me," she gasped, repositioning her grip under his arm. His skin was cold, clammy. Shocky. 2 more, just 2 more. Behind them, the twins wailed from their car seats, which Selah had somehow managed to hook over her free arm. The plastic dug into her elbow. Her legs trembled, her lungs burned. Keegan's head lolled against her shoulder. "Leave me," he murmured. "Take the children. Shut up and walk." They reached her door. Selah fumbled with keys she could barely feel, finally shoving the door open. The apartment was exactly as she'd left it that morning, cramped, shabby, a mattress on the floor and a kitchen table that doubled as her desk. Now it would become an operating room. She dropped Keegan into the single chair and ran back for the babies, carrying them inside and setting them in the corner, still strapped in their seats. They'd stopped crying, watching her with those wide, dark eyes that seemed too knowing for infants. "Okay," Selah breathed, her hands shaking as she gathered supplies. Vodka from under the sink. The first aid kit she'd stolen from her clinical rotation. Tweezers, dental floss, a lighter. Towels that used to be white. Okay. She cleared the kitchen table with one sweep of her arm, papers and dishes crashing to the floor. I need you on the table, now. Keegan stood, swaying. Made it 2 steps before his knees buckled. Selah caught him, her small frame somehow bearing his weight long enough to maneuver him onto the table. His suit jacket came off in pieces. The shirt beneath was ruined, soaked through. I'm going to cut this off, she said, already reaching for scissors. The fluorescent light overhead buzzed and flickered as she worked, casting harsh shadows across his torso. The tattoos were even more intricate up close. Characters and coordinates winding across his ribs, his chest, disappearing beneath his belt. But it was the wound that held her attention. High on his left shoulder, still seeping. The bullet was deep, lodged somewhere near the scapula. Selah poured vodka over her hands, over the tweezers, over the wound. Keegan's body went rigid, but he didn't make a sound. I'm going to hurt you, she warned. You already are. Her hands steadied as she began. The medical training she'd abandoned came flooding back. Find the entry point. Follow the trajectory. Don't rush. Don't guess. The tweezers slipped once, twice. Blood welled up, hot and thick. She could hear his breathing change, sharp and controlled, fighting against the pain. She was 3 inches deep when his hand shot out and grabbed her wrist. Selah froze, her heart hammering. His grip was firm but not threatening. His eyes, clearer now, focused, locked onto hers. You've done this before. It wasn't a question. Selah's throat tightened. She thought of the anatomy lab, the cadavers, the clinical rotations where she'd watched surgeons work with steady hands and steady hearts. She thought of her father bleeding out on asphalt, while she'd screamed for help. She didn't know how to give. I've failed at this before, she said quietly. Today I won't. Keegan's grip loosened. He nodded once and released her wrist, his head falling back against the table. Selah took a breath and went deeper. The tweezers found metal. She adjusted her angle, closed the tips around the bullet, and pulled. It came free with a wet sound that made her stomach turn. The bullet clattered into a bowl, small, flattened, impossibly deadly for something so insignificant. She worked fast after that, flushing the wound, packing it with gauze, stitching with dental floss in neat, tight rows that would have made her old professors proud. Or horrified. Maybe both. When she finally stepped back, her hands were covered in his blood. The towels were ruined. Keegan's chest rose and fell in shallow, even breaths. Unconscious now, his body finally surrendering to exhaustion. In the corner, the twins had fallen asleep. Selah sank to the floor, her back against the cabinets, and stared at the man bleeding on her kitchen table. What have I done? She whispered to the empty room. But the room, full of sleeping strangers, and the metallic smell of blood, offered no answer. By the 3rd day, an uncomfortable rhythm had formed. Keegan slept on her mattress while Selah took the couch, waking every 2 hours to check his breathing and change his dressing. The twins, Minho and Yuna, required constant attention. Bottles every 3 hours, diaper changes that left Selah's small trash can overflowing, endless cycles of crying and soothing and brief, merciful silence. She'd called in sick to both jobs. Couldn't exactly explain why she looked like she hadn't slept in 72 hours, or why her hands smelled like antiseptic and fear. The heater had died sometime during the 2nd night. Selah woke to her breath fogging in the air, the babies whimpering from cold. She'd piled every blanket she owned over them and cranked the oven, leaving the door open for warmth. When she returned from a pharmacy run, more gauze, more formula, more everything, she found Keegan on his knees in front of the radiator, shirtless despite the cold, his good arm elbow deep in the ancient mechanism. What are you doing? You'll tear your stitches. It's the valve. His voice was rough from disuse. Corroded. You have pliers? She did. He fixed it in 15 minutes, his movements precise despite the obvious pain. When the radiator clanked to life and actual heat began pumping through the apartment, Selah could have cried. "Thank you," she said quietly. He nodded, already moving back toward the mattress. But he swayed, catching himself on the wall. Selah was there instantly, her shoulder under his arm, guiding him down. That's when she really noticed the tattoos. They covered nearly every inch of his torso and arms, intricate and deliberate. Not the random collection of prison ink or artistic expression. These were organized, methodical. Strings of numbers wound around his ribs. Characters she didn't recognize marched down his forearms. Coordinates traced his collarbone. "What language is that?" she asked, helping him settle against the pillows. "Old Korean. Hanja." His eyes followed her gaze. Mixed with classical Chinese. Yuna started fussing. Selah lifted her from the makeshift bassinet, a drawer lined with towels, and prepared a bottle one-handed, a skill she'd somehow mastered through necessity. She sat cross-legged on the floor, feeding the baby, while Keegan watched with an expression she couldn't read. "They're not random, are they?" Selah said. "The tattoos." A long silence. Then, "No." She waited. Minho began to cry, and Keegan reached for him with his good arm, cradling the boy against his chest with surprising gentleness. The baby quieted immediately, tiny fingers grasping at the bandages. "They're accounts," Keegan said finally. "Access codes, locations, everything my organization has built over 30 years. His jaw tightened. Everything they want. Selah's blood went cold. "You made yourself the ledger. They can't steal what they can't read, and they can't read what's written in a dead language on a living man." He looked down at Minho, something broken in his expression. "I thought it would keep us safe. Keep them safe. But someone figured it out. Someone always does." The weight of it settled over her like ash. He wasn't just a target. He was the entire treasury. As long as he lived, he was worth more alive than dead. But only barely. And the twins, whatever their connection to this world, were leverage, insurance, collateral. "How many people want you dead?" she asked quietly. Keegan's smile was bitter. "How many people want to be rich?" Outside, a car alarm blared and died. Inside, the radiator knocked and hissed, pumping heat into a tiny apartment that had become a fortress, a hospital, a home for the hunted. Selah looked at the man holding a baby against his tattooed chest, at the other infant sleeping in her arms, at the blood-stained towels still soaking in her sink. "We can't stay here," she whispered. "I know." But neither of them moved. The formula ran out on day 4. So did the antibiotics Selah had been rationing from her stolen first aid kit. Keegan's fever had finally broken, but the twins were running through supplies faster than she'd anticipated. Babies, she'd discovered, were expensive hostages. "I need to make a run," she told Keegan, already pulling on her turquoise hoodie. 30 minutes? Maybe 40. He was sitting up now, moving with careful deliberation that suggested the worst of the pain had passed. "Don't go to the same pharmacy." "I'm not stupid. No." His eyes met hers. "You're reckless. There's a difference." Selah grabbed her keys. "Watch them. If they cry, check the diaper first. If that's not it, they're probably hungry, but we're out of... I know how to care for my children." Something in his voice made her pause. Right. He'd been doing this before she found him. Before the blood and the gun and the burning car. These were his babies. She was just the idiot who'd gotten involved. The drugstore was 3 blocks away, different from the one she'd hit before. Selah kept her hood up, her head down, moving through the aisles with practiced efficiency. Formula, the expensive kind that didn't make them spit up. Diapers, antibacterial ointment, more gauze. She didn't notice the man in the black jacket watching from the end of the aisle. Didn't see him make a phone call as she checked out. Didn't realize she'd been followed until she was already home, already climbing the stairs with bags cutting into her arms. The apartment was too quiet. Sayla's heart stopped. She dropped the bags and ran inside. Keegan was on the floor, both babies in his arms. Minho's lips were blue. Yuna's tiny body convulsed in silent spasms. Her eyes rolled back. What happened? Sayla was already grabbing Minho, her fingers checking his airway. I made bottles, used the new formula. Keegan's voice was raw. They drank it. Then they... Poison. The word slammed into her like a fist. Someone had poisoned the formula. Someone who knew she'd buy it. Someone who'd been watching. Sayla's training kicked in before terror could. She grabbed a turkey baster from the drawer, filled a bowl with warm water and salt. Hold Yuna upright. Don't let her choke. Gastric lavage. She'd read about it, never performed it, never wanted to. But reading would have to be enough. She worked on Minho first, his small body rigid in her arms. The improvised tube went down, came back up with formula-tinged pink. Again. Again, his lips stayed blue. Come on, she thought desperately. Come on, baby, breathe. His chest heaved. He coughed, vomited, gasped. Color flooded back into his face. Give me Yuna. They worked in frantic silence, Sayla's hands steady despite the fear clawing at her throat. When Yuna finally coughed and cried, that beautiful, angry sound, Sayla nearly collapsed. They found us. Keegan's voice was flat. He was staring at the new formula container on the counter, unopened packages Sayla had just brought home. They've been watching. The bags, someone had gotten to them between the store and the apartment, or at the store itself. The man in the black jacket she hadn't noticed, hadn't thought to notice. Sayla looked at the babies, alive but traumatized, at the compromised supplies, at Keegan's face carved from stone and rage. We run, he said quietly, or we die here. Choose. Sayla was already moving. She grabbed her delivery bag, started shoving in supplies, blankets, the remaining clean bottles, diapers, her first aid kit, Keegan's blood-stained shirt because it might be evidence or leverage or something. She didn't know, but she took it anyway. How much time do we have? She asked. None. 8 minutes later, they were in her Honda, the twins strapped in the back, everything they could carry crammed into the trunk. Sayla's hands shook on the wheel. Where do we go? Keegan was scanning the street, his jaw tight. Anywhere but here. Drive. She drove. They made it 6 blocks before the first car appeared in her rearview mirror. Black SUV, tinted windows, moving with the kind of aggressive confidence that said civilian rules didn't apply. Sayla's stomach dropped. Company, she said. Keegan twisted in his seat, grimacing at the movement. How many? 1. No, wait. 2 more vehicles peeled out from a side street, boxing them in from behind. 3. Drive faster. I'm in a 15-year-old Honda, not a... The rear window exploded. Glass rained into the back seat. The twins screamed. Sayla screamed. Her foot slammed the accelerator to the floor. The Honda lurched forward, engine whining in protest. Sayla yanked the wheel right, cutting through a gas station lot, narrowly missing the pumps. She knew these streets. Every delivery driver in Chicago knew the shortcuts, the alleys too narrow for full-size vehicles, the loading zones and service roads that didn't appear on GPS. Hold on, she said, and jerked the wheel left into an alley barely wider than her mirrors. The SUVs couldn't follow, but she heard them. Tires squealing as they searched for another route, engines roaring like hunting dogs picking up a scent. Sayla burst out onto a parallel street and immediately took another turn. Then another. The industrial district spread around them, a maze of warehouses and railroad tracks, and forgotten lots where businesses went to die. She'd delivered here 100 times, dodging potholes and avoiding dead ends. Behind them, the SUVs regrouped. Closer now. The bridge, Keegan said suddenly. The one over the rail yard, take it. That bridge is condemned. They won't expect it. Another shot shattered her side mirror. The babies were hysterical. Selah's hands were white-knuckled on the wheel. She saw the bridge ahead, old, rusted warning signs screaming unsafe structure. She aimed for it anyway. The Honda hit the bridge at 60 miles per hour. The metal groaned beneath them. For one suspended moment, Selah was sure they'd plunge through, car and babies and all. Then they were across, tires hitting solid ground on the other side. The lead SUV wasn't as lucky. It hit the bridge and the structure gave way, metal screaming as the vehicle plunged through into the rail yard below. But the other two kept coming. Selah swerved into the warehouse district, her mind racing. There, an access road between two massive abandoned buildings. She took it without thinking. The road ended in a chain-link fence. No, no, no. Selah hit the brakes, but they were going too fast. The Honda crashed through the fence, airborne for a heartbeat, then slammed down hard. The world spun. Metal shrieked, the airbags deployed, punching the air from Selah's lungs. Then everything was still. Selah's ears were ringing. Blood ran into her eye from somewhere. In the back seat, the twins were crying, which meant they were alive, which meant she hadn't killed them yet. Out! Keegan commanded. He was already moving, shoving his door open. Now! Selah unbuckled, her hands clumsy. She grabbed Minho's car seat, hauling it out. Keegan had Una. The Honda was crumpled, smoking, finished. The SUVs pulled up behind them, doors flying open. Men poured out. 5, 6. Too many. Armed, Keegan had somehow retrieved a gun from the wreckage. He fired 3 shots, forcing them into cover. Run! They ran into the warehouse. Keegan somehow keeping pace despite the fresh blood seeping through his shirt. Selah's lungs burned. Minho's car seat weighed 1,000 pounds. Stop, Keegan said. They ducked behind a concrete pillar. His hands were already working, unstrapping Minho from the car seat. Leave those. We carry them. He pulled off his jacket, fashioned it into a makeshift sling, and strapped Minho to his chest. Selah did the same with her hoodie and Una, the baby's small body pressed against her heart. Stay close, Keegan said. Stay quiet. Behind them, flashlights cut through the darkness. Voices called out in Korean. And somewhere in the depths of the abandoned warehouse, Selah and Keegan vanished into the shadows with 2 babies, who had already survived more than any infant should have to. The warehouse was a labyrinth. Rusted machinery loomed in the darkness, casting shadows that moved like living things. Selah's breath came in short gasps, her hand pressed against Una's back, feeling the baby's rapid heartbeat against her palm. They'd been moving for 20 minutes, maybe more. Time felt broken. Every corridor led to another, every door opened onto emptiness. Behind them, the hunters spread out, their footsteps echoing through the cavernous space. Keegan led them deeper, his movements deliberate despite the blood staining his shirt. He'd been shot again during the escape. Selah had seen it happen, seen him flinch but not stop. How he was still moving, she didn't know. They rounded a corner and stopped cold. Loading bay. 3 exits, all blocked by figures in tactical gear. Flashlights pinned them like insects. Selah counted 7 guns aimed at their heads. Down! Someone commanded. Put the children down and step away. Keegan's hand tightened on his weapon. Selah could feel him calculating odds, trajectories, impossible mathematics that all ended the same way. Don't, she whispered. Please. The lead figure stepped forward, smaller than the others, moving with a precision that felt familiar. She reached up and pulled off her mask. Selah's world tilted. Nina? Her sister looked older, harder. The girl who'd braided Selah's hair and snuck her ice cream after their parents fought was gone, replaced by someone wearing tactical gear and holding a gun with professional ease. "Hey, Sel." Nina's voice cracked on the nickname. "I'm sorry." "You're sorry?" Sayla's voice rose, fury cutting through shock. "You're with them? They poisoned babies, Nina. Babies." "I know." Nina's face twisted. "I know, and God, Sayla. They have Lily. They have my daughter." The gun in her hand trembled. "They told me to find you or they'd kill her. She's 6. She's 6 years old and they have her." The other hunters were getting impatient, moving closer. One of them, tall, cold-eyed, spoke in rapid Korean. Keegan responded, his tone sharp. The man's expression didn't change, but his gun shifted, aiming at Una. "Jiho's orders," the man said in accented English. "The children are liabilities. Clean this up, Nina, or we clean up Lily." Nina's hand shook. "I can't." "Then we all die here," the man said. "Your choice." Time crystallized. Sayla saw it happen in Nina's eyes, the decision, the surrender, the breaking point. Her sister raised her gun and aimed it at Jiho's man. "Run!" Nina said. "Exit behind me. 3 blocks east, there's a blue shipping container. Inside, you'll find keys to a van. Run, Sayla, now." "Nina!" Nina fired. The man went down. Chaos erupted. The other hunters opened fire, but Nina was already moving, drawing their attention, their bullets. She returned fire, dropping another, buying seconds that felt like hours. "Go!" Nina screamed. Sayla ran. Keegan was right behind her, returning fire over his shoulder. They burst through the exit into the cold night air. Behind them, gunshots. So many gunshots. Then silence. Sayla stopped, turned. "Nina!" Keegan grabbed her arm. "She's gone." No, we have to—" "She's gone." But Sayla was already running back, her hand clamped over Una's head. She found Nina in the loading bay, sprawled across the concrete, blood pooling beneath her. Too much blood. Sayla dropped to her knees. No, Nina, stay with me." "Sel." Nina's hand found hers. "You were always the brave one." I'm not. I run from everything. I fail at everything." "You're here." Nina's grip tightened. "You stayed. You fought." Her eyes drifted to Una, strapped to Sayla's chest. "Save them. Save all of them. Promise me." "Nina." "Lily. She's at 2847 Maple Grove. Pink house. Get her out. Promise me." I promise." Nina's hand went slack. Her eyes stared at nothing. Keegan pulled Sayla to her feet. She didn't remember standing. Didn't remember starting to run again. But they were moving. The cold air burning her lungs, Una crying against her chest, Nina's blood on her hands. Behind them, sirens wailed. Ahead, a blue shipping container. Inside, keys to a van and a future Sayla never wanted but couldn't escape. She'd been running her whole life. From failure, from grief, from responsibility. Not anymore. She found the keys, started the van, looked at Keegan, at the twins, at the life she'd accidentally chosen. 2847 Maple Grove, she said. "We're getting Lily first." Keegan nodded. Understanding passed between them. They weren't running anymore. They were fighting back. They rescued Lily in under 20 minutes. The pink house had been guarded by 2 men who never saw Keegan coming. The little girl, dark hair, Nina's eyes, had been locked in a basement, terrified but unharmed. She'd clung to Sayla with the kind of desperate trust that broke something in Sayla's chest and rebuilt it stronger. Now they were driving north, away from the city, toward a safe house Keegan claimed existed. Lily sat in the back with the twins, singing them a soft, off-key lullaby that somehow kept all 3 children calm. "How much further?" Sayla asked. Her hands ached from gripping the wheel. She'd been driving for 4 hours. 10 miles, maybe less. Keegan's voice was rough. He'd been silent since they left the city, staring out the window at the darkness rushing past. The cabin appeared suddenly, a shadow against shadows, set back from a dirt road that probably didn't exist on any map. Sayla killed the engine. The silence was absolute. "One of my father's hunting cabins," Keegan said. Only 3 people know about it. We're safe here. They carried the sleeping children inside. The cabin was small, sparse, a single room with a wood stove, a narrow bed, a threadbare couch. Selah made a nest of blankets on the couch for the children, tucking them in with the kind of care that felt automatic now. When she turned, Keegan was watching her. Something in his expression made her breath catch. "You didn't have to come back for me," he said quietly. "At the warehouse, you could have run." "So could you. Multiple times. I had reasons to stay. So did I." The air between them felt charged, dangerous. Selah was suddenly aware of how close they were standing, of the blood still staining both their clothes, of everything they'd survived together in 5 impossible days. "Selah," she kissed him, or he kissed her. Later, she wouldn't remember who moved first, only that suddenly his hands were in her hair, and hers were clutching his shirt, and 5 days of terror and grief and desperate proximity ignited into something that felt like drowning and surfacing all at once. They stumbled backward. His hands found the hem of her shirt. Her fingers traced the tattoos on his chest, those coded secrets written in dead languages. He was careful with her, surprisingly gentle for a man who'd killed 6 people in the last 24 hours. "Your shoulder," she gasped against his mouth. "You'll tear the stitches." "I don't care." Neither did she. Not about stitches or sanity, or the fact that this was the worst possible idea in a week full of terrible decisions. She cared about his hands on her skin, about the way he said her name like a prayer, about feeling alive when everything kept trying to make her dead. They fell onto the narrow bed together. Outside, wind rattled the windows. Inside, grief and fear transformed into something else, something fierce and necessary and probably doomed. His lips found her throat. Her hands mapped the muscles of his back, careful of the fresh wounds. For 5 minutes, maybe 10, the world outside stopped hunting them. Then headlights cut through the window. They froze. Keegan was off the bed instantly, reaching for his gun. Selah grabbed her shirt, her heart hammering. "How many?" she whispered. Keegan moved to the window, keeping low. 3 vehicles, at least 8 men. "How? You said only 3 people." His face went hard, cold. "The Allies sold us out." "Of course he did. Of course. Because trust was a luxury they couldn't afford, and safety was a lie people told before bullets started flying." On the couch, Lily stirred. The twins were still sleeping, oblivious. "Back exit?" Selah asked, already moving. "Blocked. They're surrounding us." Keegan checked his ammunition. "We're trapped." Selah looked at the 3 children, at Keegan, at the walls closing in. She thought of Nina's last words. Save them. Save all of them. "Then we don't run," she said. "We fight." Keegan's smile was sharp, deadly. "Together?" "Together." Outside, car doors slammed. Voices called out in Korean. And inside the hunting cabin, 2 people who'd been strangers less than a week ago prepared to defend 3 children against an army they couldn't possibly defeat. But they'd try anyway. The door exploded inward. Not kicked, blown off its hinges with a controlled charge that left Selah's ears ringing and the children screaming. Tactical team poured through, red laser sights painting the walls like blood spatter. 8 men, full gear, moving with military precision. And behind them, walking with the casual confidence of someone who'd already won, came Jiho. He was smaller than Selah expected. Lean, sharp-featured, wearing a suit that probably cost more than her car had. His gun hung loose in his hand, pointed at nothing and everything. Behind wire-rimmed glasses, his eyes were cold and calculating. "Keegan." He spoke English for Selah's benefit. "You've led us on quite a chase." Keegan stood in front of the couch where the children huddled. His gun was aimed at Jiho's head, but they both knew the math. 8 trained soldiers versus 1 injured man and a delivery driver. How did you find us? Your father's old lieutenant. He sold this location for significantly less than it was worth. Jiho smiled. Loyalty is expensive. Betrayal is cheap. What do you want? What I've always wanted. Evolution. The Hanul Syndicate is dying, Keegan. Your father's ways, your ways, honor, tradition, protection, they're relics. The world has moved on. Jiho gestured at the cabin, at Sela, at the children. This sentimentality is what made you weak. I kept us strong for 20 years. You kept us stagnant. Jiho's voice hardened. Do you know how much money you've cost us? How many opportunities you've refused because they weren't honorable? The Americans, the Russians, the Chinese, they're all expanding while you play house with orphans and refuse to modernize. Sela's blood went cold. Orphans. Plural. Jiho saw her reaction and laughed. Oh, she doesn't know. How delightful. He turned to Keegan. Tell her about Una. Keegan's jaw clenched. Don't. Una isn't his biological daughter, Jiho said conversationally, as if discussing the weather. She's the child of Chairman Park, the man Keegan overthrew 8 years ago. Park's wife died giving birth. Park himself died 6 months later when Keegan seized control. His smile was vicious. And what did our noble leader do? Swore an oath to protect the child. Raised her as his own. Refused to eliminate a future threat because of sentiment. Sela looked at Keegan, at the man who'd been carrying that burden for 8 years. You promised to protect her. I swore it, Keegan said quietly. A deathbed oath. I don't break those. And that, Jiho said, is why you have to die. He raised his gun, not at Keegan, at the couch, at the 3 children huddled there, Lily's arms around the twins, at Una. The old blood ends tonight. Time fractured. Sela saw it happen in slow motion, Jiho's finger tightening on the trigger, Keegan lunging but too far away, the children too exposed, too vulnerable. She moved without thinking. The cast-iron skillet was on the stove, cold and heavy. She grabbed it and swung with every ounce of strength she had left. The skillet connected with the nearest guard's head, with a sound like a mallet hitting meat. He went down. His gun clattered to the floor. Sela grabbed it, spun, fired twice into the ceiling. Chaos erupted. The tactical team scattered, covering from unexpected fire. Keegan used the distraction, closing the distance to Jiho in 3 steps. His fist connected with Jiho's wrist, sending the gun flying. They went down together in a tangle of limbs and violence. Sela kept firing, not to kill, just to create panic, to buy seconds. A guard returned fire. The bullet passed so close to her head she felt the heat. She dropped, rolled, came up with the guard's dropped weapon. Behind her, Lily was screaming. The twins were screaming. Everything was gunfire and smoke and Sela's heartbeat thundering in her ears. Keegan had Jiho pinned, his forearm across the man's throat. Blood ran from Jiho's nose, his mouth. But he was laughing, still laughing. You can't win, Jiho choked out. The council has already voted. You're finished. Then I'll die finishing you, Keegan said. No. Sela's voice cut through. She had a gun trained on the remaining guards, who'd frozen in a standoff nobody wanted to test. We take him alive. Keegan looked at her like she'd lost her mind. Why? Because dead men can't confess. Sela's hands were steady despite the terror coursing through her. Because we're going to walk into that council meeting, and Jiho is going to tell them exactly what he's done. Jiho stopped laughing. Sela met Keegan's eyes. We're not running anymore. We're taking back your empire. Keegan smiled, sharp, dangerous, alive. He hauled Jiho to his feet, the man's arm twisted behind his back. You heard her. We're going to the council. They'll kill you both, Jiho spat. Maybe. Sela grabbed the children, ushering them toward the back door the guards had left unguarded in their panic. But we'll drag you down with us. Outside, the van was still running. They piled in, 3 children, 1 wounded crime lord, one delivery driver with a stolen gun, and one captive architect of betrayal. And they drove toward the lion's den. They'd been driving for 30 minutes when Lily's voice came from the back, small and terrified. "Something's wrong with the baby." Sayla's eyes snapped to the rearview mirror. Lily was holding Minho, and even in the dim light, Sayla could see the dark stain spreading across the infant's white onesie. "Pull over," Keegan said. His voice was tight. "Now." Sayla swerved onto the shoulder, gravel spraying. She was out of the van before it fully stopped, yanking open the back door. Minho's breathing was shallow, rapid. The bullet graze along his ribs, barely visible in the chaos at the cabin, had reopened, or worsened. The blood wasn't stopping. "No, no, no!" Sayla lifted him, her hand immediately soaked red. "How did I miss this? How did I—" "There." Keegan pointed ahead. An abandoned gas station, its sign dark, windows boarded. "Pull in. We have 3 minutes, maybe 4. Sayla drove like she was being chased by death itself. Because she was. Minho's death. Fast approaching if she didn't move faster. Think faster. Be better than the failure she'd always been. The gas station bathroom smelled like rust and rot. Sayla kicked the door open, laid Minho on the counter beside the sink. His lips were pale, his eyes unfocused. "First aid kit," she barked at Lily. "In the van, red bag, run!" Keegan had dragged Jai-Ho inside, the man's hands zip-tied behind his back, his mouth bloody from the earlier fight. He shoved him into the corner. "What do you need?" "Blood." Sayla's hands were already stripping Minho's clothes, assessing the wound. The graze had torn an artery, small but enough. The baby had been bleeding internally for 30 minutes. "He needs a transfusion, now." "I'm O-negative," Keegan said immediately. He was already rolling up his sleeve. "Universal donor." Sayla's mind raced. No hospital, no equipment. Just a filthy bathroom, a dying baby, and medical training she'd abandoned 2 years ago. She thought of her father bleeding out while she stood useless. Thought of Nina dying in her arms. Thought of every time she'd run from the hard thing, the impossible thing. Not this time. Lily returned with the kit. Sayla dumped it out. Bandages, tape, alcohol wipes, and one IV bag meant for saline. Empty. "This is insane," Jai-Ho said from the corner. His voice was mocking despite the blood in his mouth. "You're going to kill him trying to save him. You're not a doctor. You're a dropout, a delivery driver playing hero." Sayla ignored him. She sterilized the needle with the last of their vodka, her hands steady despite the fear clawing at her throat. "Keegan, arm out." He complied without hesitation. Sayla found the vein on her first try, muscle memory from clinical rotations taking over. The needle slid in. Blood flowed into the cut IV bag, dark and precious. "You're nothing," Jai-Ho continued, his voice venomous. "An accident. A civilian who stumbled into something she can't possibly understand. You'll never be one of us. You'll never—" "You're right." Sayla's voice was calm as she switched the line, inserting the needle into Minho's tiny arm, with a precision that surprised her. The blood began flowing, Keegan's life sustaining the baby's. "I'll never be like you." She taped the needle in place, checked the flow rate, monitored Minho's breathing. Color was already returning to his lips. His chest rose and fell more steadily. "I'll never be like any of you," Sayla continued, still not looking at Jai-Ho. "I'll never poison babies to make a point. I'll never use children as leverage. I'll never mistake cruelty for strength." The transfusion continued. Keegan sat against the wall, his arm outstretched, his blood saving his son. Both his sons, biological or not. "You want to know what I'll be?" Sayla finally met Jai-Ho's eyes. "I'll be better." Minho coughed, cried, that beautiful, angry sound that meant alive, meant fighting, meant not giving up. Sayla removed the needle, dressed the wound with steady hands. She checked his vitals one more time, heartbeat strong, breathing normal, color returned. "We're done," she said. Keegan pulled his arm back, pale but smiling. You saved him. We saved him. Sayla gathered Minho in her arms, the baby already calming. She looked at Lily, at Una sleeping in her car seat, at Keegan who'd given his blood without hesitation, at Jaiho who'd tried to destroy them all. Let's go finish this, she said. And they drove toward Chicago, toward the council, toward the ending Sayla was going to write herself. The Hanul Syndicate headquarters sat in downtown Chicago, disguised as a legitimate import-export firm. 30 stories of steel and glass that looked like any other corporate building. Inside, on the 30th floor, 12 men sat around a table made of wood older than the city itself, deciding who lived and who died. Sayla walked through the lobby at 3 a.m., Minho strapped to her chest in the makeshift sling, Lily holding her hand, Keegan beside her with Una in his arms, and Jaiho stumbling ahead at gunpoint. They looked like refugees from a war zone, which, Sayla supposed, they were. Security moved to intercept. Keegan spoke one word in Korean. They stepped aside. The elevator ride took forever. Lily squeezed Sayla's hand. Minho made small sounds against her chest. Jiho's breathing was ragged, blood still seeping from the wound in his side. Last chance to run, Keegan murmured. Sayla thought of Nina's last words, of her parents dying while she stood helpless, of every time she'd chosen safety over courage, comfort over the hard right thing. I'm done running, she said. The elevator doors opened onto a conference room. 12 men in expensive suits, their faces carved from stone and suspicion. At the head of the table sat Elder Han, 90 if he was a day, his eyes sharp enough to cut. They took in the scene, the blood-stained delivery driver, the wounded boss, the captive traitor, the children. Keegan see. Elder Han's voice was dry as desert wind. You were declared dead 3 days ago. Reports of my death, Keegan said, shoving Jaiho forward, have been greatly exaggerated. Jaiho fell to his knees. One of the council members stood, hand moving toward a weapon. Sayla stepped forward, her voice cutting through the tension. Sit down. 12 pairs of eyes fixed on her. She should have been terrified. A week ago, she would have been. But she'd performed surgery on a kitchen table, saved babies from poison, survived a car chase and a shootout, and kept 3 children alive while the world tried to kill them. She was done being afraid. My name is Sayla Pham. Her voice was steady. A week ago, I was a delivery driver who found your boss bleeding in a burning car. I didn't know who he was. I didn't know what he'd become to me, or what I'd become because of him. She looked at Minho, at Una, at Lily. I just knew children were going to die if I ran. She pulled a USB drive from her pocket, Jaiho's laptop, cracked by Keegan during the drive. This contains evidence of embezzlement, assassination contracts, and communications with your rivals. Jaiho wasn't modernizing your organization. He was selling it piece by piece. She tossed the drive onto the table. It skittered across the wood, stopping in front of Elder Han. You can kill us, Sayla continued. Restart this war. Let Jaiho's allies fracture what's left of your power. She met Elder Han's eyes. Or you can evolve. Evolution? One of the council members sneered. From a delivery driver? From someone who sees what you refuse to. Sayla's voice sharpened. Keegan kept you strong through honor. Jaiho would have destroyed you through greed. I'm offering you something else. Strategy. Modernization without brutality. Expansion without losing what makes you powerful. And what makes us powerful? Elder Han asked, genuine curiosity in his voice. Loyalty. Sayla looked at Keegan, at the man who'd sworn an oath to protect an enemy's child and kept it for 8 years. The kind you can't buy. The kind that makes a dropout perform surgery in a filthy apartment. The kind that makes a sister die so her family might live. Silence. Then Elder Han picked up the USB drive. Bold words from someone covered in blood. Your blood, Selah said. Your war, your choice. She checked her watch, Nina's watch, still on her wrist. But make it fast. I have 3 children who need dinner, and I don't do late deliveries anymore. A sound like thunder. Elder Han was laughing. The woman who saved a king, he said, his eyes bright with something that might have been respect, becomes a queen. He looked at the rest of the council. But the woman who challenges a kingdom? He smiled. She becomes an empire. One by one, the council members nodded. 6 months later, Selah stood in an office that used to be Jiho's, reviewing logistics reports on a tablet while Yuna napped in a portable crib by the window. Her clothing was tailored now, professional, but she still wore her turquoise hoodie on weekends. Some things were worth keeping. Through the glass wall, she could see the penthouse gym where Keegan was teaching Minho to take his first steps, the 11-month-old wobbling between his father's hands while Lily cheered from the side. Her phone buzzed. Council meeting in 10 minutes. Selah closed the tablet, checked her reflection. The delivery driver was gone. In her place stood someone who'd learned that courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was driving straight into it, with babies strapped to your chest, and a plan you made up as you went. She walked into the conference room where 12 men waited, 13 now, with her seat at the table. Elder Han smiled. Report? Selah opened her folder. The shipment from Seoul cleared customs. Our partnerships with the tech sector are performing above projections. Violence is down 40%. Profit is up 60%. And the rival factions? Contained. 3 chose to negotiate. 2 chose poorly. She didn't elaborate. They didn't need her to. You've done well, Selah C. Elder Han's use of the honorific still felt strange. Your sister would be proud. Selah thought of Nina, of the pink house, of promises kept. She already knew what I was capable of. She just had to die for me to figure it out. After the meeting, she found Keegan in their bedroom, Minho finally asleep in his arms. Yuna was already down. Lily was in her room, doing homework for the private school Selah had enrolled her in. How was the council? Keegan asked. Profitable. She took Minho, laid him gently in his crib. Also, Elder Han called me an empire again. He's not wrong. Selah looked at her reflection in the window, at the woman who'd stumbled into a burning car and walked out transformed. At the family sleeping around her. Safe because she'd refused to let them die. At the city spread below, full of deliveries she'd never make again. No, she said softly. He's not. Outside, Chicago glowed against the winter night. Inside, a former delivery driver who'd become a queen, no, an empire, tucked in the children she'd saved and prepared for whatever tomorrow brought. She'd stopped running, she'd started fighting, and she'd won. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.